So this weekend we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family, and when I was reading about it and reflecting on it, I couldn't help but thinking of my own family, and the memories that came to mind almost instantly were the birth of my two daughters. My first one was born in what was Flint Osteopathic Hospital that used to be over there off Ballinger Road. And I remember getting ready, going to the hospital, my wife saying, "Yeah, I don't need none of that anesthesia stuff. No shots, no epidurals, I'm good, I can do this." Well, it took 13 hours for my first daughter to be born. So my wife was in labor for 13 hours with no drugs. She is tough, and I never mess with her. So, and I remember thinking, or we thought, boy, this is a sign. This one, she's going to be stubborn, hard-headed, strong-willed, and all that stuff. And we were right. She was, and 24 years later, she still is. And I remember standing, going to be the good husband, stand and hold my wife's hand while she's in labor. Yeah, right. 13 hours? No. But when it came close to the time, or we thought it was, one of the nurses came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "You need to go sit down." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "You're as white as a ghost. And if you faint, and we're not taking care of you, go sit down." So I went and sat down. Then 4.5 or 5 years later, my second daughter came along, and she was born at Genesis. And at that time, my wife said, "Yep, I want all the drugs. Give me everything. I'm not going through that again." So the drugs did come, the anesthesiologist did come right after my daughter was born. And he was standing in the doorway of the room, I remember this, holding something, a needle or something. And one of the nurses looked at him and said, "You better run fast, because if she finds out you're here now, you're dead." So he ran away. And the same thing, I was going to hold my wife's hand, during labor, so I got myself all set. I ate well, made sure I was in tip-top physical condition to endure this, even though I was just standing there. Same nurse tapped me on the shoulder. "You need to go sit down." I'm like, "You're kidding me." "No, look in the mirror. You look horrible." And she was right. I did. So I went and sat down. So all of this came to mind as I'm reflecting on the Feast of the Holy Family. And I can tell you, as a dad, holding both my daughters the first time, looking at them for the first time, feeling their skin for the first time, smelling that new baby smell they have for the first time, I was looking at a miracle. It's just hard to comprehend. It's inexplainable. It can only be a miracle. So when I hear this story today about this family taking their son to the temple because it's what the law told them to do, I sometimes wonder, did Joseph the dad feel the same way I did about his brand new baby boy? Did Mary, the mom, was she just madly in love with this brand new baby she had? And even though he was born in a barn in a manger and all that stuff, did he have that new baby smell? Did he smell like a new baby? And then when they brought him into the temple, Simeon met them, right? And they were amazed at what he said about their baby. Amazed because Simeon said what he did because he had seen what God had been promising for generations. He had seen the Messiah. He had seen the Christ. He had seen the salvation of Israel. And he was excited. And Mary and Joseph, they couldn't believe it, right? But that's what Simeon said. So Simeon saw salvation. Wouldn't it be cool if we could see salvation? Well, we can. Because salvation isn't just something we get after we die. Salvation is being in the presence of God and knowing it. Simeon, when Jesus was there, knew He was in the presence of God. God was there in that baby, and he knew it. He had seen salvation. So we can do that too. You know, I talk over and over and over again about reflecting on our days and how important that is. And we can see salvation by doing that when we just reflect on the events that we've gone through and recognizing where it was in that day we saw God. Where was God? And when we recognize him and know that we were in God's presence, we see salvation. We are in his presence and we know it. And this method of praying, reflecting like that, is so important that it's part of the Liturgy of the Hours called night prayer. Part of that prayer that I pray every night is to reflect on what happened during the day. Where was God? What did he do for me? Where was Jesus? How did he take care of me? And then the words of Simeon are actually part of the prayer. So after reflecting, we say those words in the night prayer. We say, Lord, now let your servant go in peace. Your word has been fulfilled. My own eyes have seen the salvation which you prepared in the sight of every people, a light to reveal you to the nations and the glory of your people Israel. So that way of praying, reflecting on our day, is so important because it helps us see salvation just like Simeon did. So on this weekend of the Feast of the Holy Family, I invite you to reflect on your family. And no matter how big it is or how small it is, how close you are or how distant you are, how healthy it is, or maybe even how broken it is, whether it's all made up of blood relatives or it's just a bunch of close friends, you can know in that family God is there. Just like he was with Mary and Joseph, God is there. And if we look, we reflect, we can be like Simeon. We can see salvation in our own families. We can see God's light with our own eyes, giving us a deep sense of peace right in our own families. How cool is that? God is present in our families, in this family. God is here. If we know God is here, we see salvation. So on this weekend of the Feast of the Holy Family, celebrate your family, no matter how big or how small it is, and know God's there.